Our discussion tonight will be about the myICLUB website and the update club settings feature that allows you to set certain parameters that can help your club website operate the way that you want it to. And we're going to take a look at those features tonight very quickly, so we'll be not taking very much of your time at the in the web the presentation. Just a few elements, but I thought it'd be very useful. We get a lot of questions about these particular features and what they mean and how you can utilize them. So we'll take a look at them one by one. Now, most of these club settings are accessed by the club administrator or the treasurer in the accounting section in the utilities area of the accounting section. You can scroll down the list and select the option for updating the club settings. Now, most of these don't need to be adjusted very frequently, but it can be a good idea to review these items to make sure the site's working to your specifications. And as I mentioned, we do get quite a few questions about particular behavior of some of the reports that is impacted by the decisions you make about which settings you turn on and off. So here is the update club settings portion of the website in its entirety. So not a whole lot going on, but it can have an impact on the monthly reports that you run and other areas. So we're going to take a look at these one at a time. The first section is the club EIN. That is your club employer identification number assigned by the IRS. Now, it doesn't mean that you are an employer. That's what they call the employer identification number. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as the taxpayer identification number, which would also incorporate a social security number. There's no charge to receive an EIN. All you have to do is apply to the IRS website, and they will assign you a number. And this number is required in order to file your club tax returns, as well as open bank and brokerage accounts. So it's one of the first things that clubs do when they set up their investment club. Now, you should not ever use a member's social security number to file your tax returns or open broker accounts or bank accounts. You should apply for and receive this employer identification number. You can do it online from the IRS website. So if you haven't done this, we suggest that you take care of it right away. Put it into the field here in the club settings. That way it will carry through to your club tax filings. At tax time, you won't have to re-enter it. It might be a good idea if you are the new treasurer to make sure that this number matches the number that the IRS actually assigned you and wasn't miskeyed when it was entered into the myICLUB website. The next item is the initial unit value. This is the price of 1 unit of your investment club when the club starts up. Now, the unit value is a feature of the unit value system of accounting, whereby every time a member invests in the partnership, they purchase units, and those units are revalued on a regular basis, typically monthly, and that schedule would be set by your partnership agreement. And every time the units are the portfolio is revalued, the units are recalculated, the number of units and the price of the units. So hopefully your unit value will grow from $10 to some other level. If you start off, it's not uncommon for your unit value to fall. Typically, you never need to change that value, and we recommend that you never do change that value. Occasionally, we get inquiries from clubs where their unit value has gotten very, very, very high, and they wish to do the equivalent of a stock split. So in this case, you could change the unit value here on the club settings screen, and then all of the calculations in the club's records would be adjusted according to that new unit value. Now, the total amount of the club's assets, the total amount of your portfolio, those would not be changed. The total amount that each member put in and withdrew from the club would not change, but the number of units would change with a reassignment of that initial unit value. And it may actually doesn't happen instantaneously, depending on the size of your club. If you were to change this, it could take several minutes for all of the calculations to be redone on our servers before you generate a new report. So, but that feature is there, and there's there's no real reason why the unit value has to be $10. You could make it $100. $10 is a nice round number. So if you're starting off with a unit value of $10 and each member is putting in $50 a month, right away they're going to each buy 5 units, and it gives you a real easy way to gauge the overall success of the club in some ways as that unit value grows over time. So while there's no absolute right or wrong reason to set that value to $10 when you start off, there's no really good reason to set it to anything other than $10 as well. So $10 tends to be the most common initial unit value that individuals set up when they start their investment clubs. The includes earlier ownership option is something that you might wish to evaluate after you set up the club, and might be something that you might want to change several years down the road. Now, this option has 2 selections, yes and no. No is going to be our new default, but this only applies to cases where you buy a stock, you sell it completely, time passes, and you repurchase it. So in those cases, you can set the myICLUB accounting engine to include that earlier ownership when calculating returns, or to ignore that earlier ownership when calculating the returns. So the idea is that you could see the overall returns from that one stock that included the time that you bought it before and sold it, or you could focus on only the most recent holding. So after there was a period where you didn't own the stock, when you would purchase it back. And again, this could reset several times. So the option is everything or only the most recent tax lot or series of tax lots. It doesn't affect if you purchase a stock and then you repurchase it and you repurchase it and you add to that position over time. This setting has no impact on it. It only impacts when you clear out the position entirely and repurchase the exact same security. And the rationale is that often clubs don't want to see the total return that they earn from a stock. Maybe they bought it, they sold it, it wasn't working out, they repurchased it later at a lower price, and since then it's done well. So they want to ignore that earlier purchase and focus on the gains that they've made from their current positions, the stock that they own right now. This is a philosophical issue, and that's why we make it a choice. You can establish your club's preferences for looking at the rate of return. This is the compound annual return that you can optionally include on each valuation statement that you generate, and other places where that compound annual return figure is calculated by security. So this is what include earlier ownership of the security means. This is pretty arcane, but we are seeing more and more clubs that might have gotten rid of stocks in the kind of extra volatile year we're having, and then dump them and then repurchase them, perhaps at a lower price. Maybe they sold at a gain, then they repurchased when the market took a dive, and now they want to know why the returns seem to be a little diminished from what they expect, when they know that the stock that they bought in the beginning of March is now up 30% for the year, and their compound annual return is showing something that just doesn't make sense to them. So this is an option that you might reconsider if you have never bought a stock, sold it completely, and then repurchased it. This setting will have no impact on the return calculations in your club. But if you have that case, then you might want to come back and revisit this. The option has been yes, but we're changing it to no for new clubs. So if you've never touched it, it should be yes for you. You may wish, if you're affected, to come back and select no and see how that makes a difference for those stocks on the valuation statement in that compound annual return column. The next item is related to that. It also deals with the return calculations, but it's how we calculate the merger and spin-off returns. based on two different options: the tax basis of the shares that you might acquire in that merger or spinoff, or the market value from the date of that transaction. Whenever you receive securities in a spinoff, or whenever there's a merger that impacts your holdings, there is an adjustment to tax basis that goes on. You may feel like, oh, we're getting free stock from this spinoff, but that's not the case. According to accounting rules, when you receive shares in a spinoff, part of the cost basis of the original parent company is transferred to the spin-off shares that you are now the owner of. So we allow you to calculate returns in two ways. One would be based on that tax basis, that transferred basis, and the other would be from the action date or the date of the merger spin-off. And that might be more useful to you because it's really giving you the return since the time that you acquired the shares, and doesn't take into account the actual cost basis of your shares that was transferred from the parent company. So again, if you don't have any mergers or spin-offs in your companies in your portfolio, then this isn't going to have any impact at all on the return calculations that you are seeing. But if you do have shares that were acquired in a merger or spinoff, then you might want to take a look at this and figure out what makes the most sense for your club. What do your members want to see in terms of the return calculations? Russell Malley is on our webinar tonight, and he is our club accounting expert. So Russell, he's our expert in terms of mergers and spinoffs. If you're a club treasurer and you have ever had to enter these transactions, Russell is the genius who creates the directions, the instructions, does the research. So Russell, I just wanted to double check and make sure that I characterized this correctly, and maybe you've got some additional insights.
Yeah, and personally, I like the market value from the action date, mainly because it tells you what's happened since you actually received those shares. If you go by tax basis, the performance of the either non-surviving company or the parent company in the spinoff can mask what actually happened for the new company. So you're seeing a combined return if you go by tax basis. So that's why personally I like to go by the market value because it tells me what's happened since I actually got those shares.
I don't recall what the default is. Let me just jump over and I want to take a look. Here we are in the accounting section. Scroll down to find the utilities, and then all the way down at the bottom, because it's not something you check out very often, is update club settings. I guess market value from the action date, your preference is the default there.
Yes, that's what I remember also.
Yeah,
that's the default.
Good, very good. And our last option is the option to upload a logo or logo picture for your club. We accept GIF, JPEG, or PNG files. They will be rescaled to 150 by 150 pixels. So if you can scale them to that dimension to start off with, they won't be resized. We will resize them. So if you upload an image in with different proportions, it might look a little odd on the website. This is great if you've got someone who loves to play around with Photoshop or makes image files. They can put together a nice clean image for your club website. The logo's displayed in the left-hand menu across your myICLUB website, as well as in the header of many of the reports. It's a great way to personalize your club's website, especially if there's something humorous in your club name. You can have an image there. And we also offer the ability to allow you to select from an image library that we have set up that can allow you to select an image that matches your personal club outlook. So that is something that if you haven't done it, we suggest go ahead, try it out, check it out. just a fun way to keep your website and your members entertained and activated, and that give you that personalized feeling on the website. So Christian asked a question, could a unit be equal to the minimum monthly investment in the club? And again, there's no reason why, if your minimum monthly investment is $100, you could initially start out your unit value to be $100. That would be fine, but it's not going to make a difference to the accounting. And after a time, as your unit value changes, it's no longer going to have any relationship to your monthly minimum member payment amount. So again, we leave it up to you, but as your unit value is going to change over time, very quickly, it's not going to have much correspondence to that minimum monthly amount. And also, I urge clubs to consider increasing their minimum monthly payment. One of my beliefs about the modern investment club movement of the last 20 years is that it's based on procedures that were developed and popularized back in the 1990s. And so back then, you could start a club with $20 and all your members will put in $20 a month and you could build a portfolio. And that $20 amount or $40 or $50 amount has been talked about for 30 years. And the value of a $20 bill today is much different than it was back in 1980, 1990. So I like to see clubs raise that monthly contribution as long as their members can afford it, and to increase it to a level so that members really have to focus on their portfolio. When you're only putting in $20 or $30 or $40 a month, it's easy to say, well, if I miss a meeting, I don't have that much at stake. But the minute members are contributing more to the club, the minute their ownership position grows significantly, then they have a real vested interest and more of a desire to participate and to help the club to be successful, as opposed to having, it's just a fun thing we do on the side, but make it a real focus. So that's just a little tidbit that I'll throw in there. I wanted to point out a couple of the new features for those of you who use the myICLUB.com website. We have been actively working on development. We are actually working right now on the 2020 tax printers for the states and for the IRS. And it looks like we'll be adding 3 states to our e-filing regimen for 2020. So that will add to Wisconsin and California and New York that we've added in the past. We've introduced e-filing for those states. And now it looks like we're going to be adding 3 more states to our e-filing capabilities. So we've been busy throughout the summer. Our lead developer and Sean have been working hard at that. But we've also got some other features that we've been enhancing, adding reports based on member feedback. So if you have ideas, we'd love to hear them. And this is a report that came from a user recommendation. It's the withdrawals summary report. It's an occasional report in the report section. It lists all of the member withdrawals for a particular date range. You can subtotal withdrawals by individual member, and you can email it, you can print it or save it as a PDF, as with all of the myICLUB reports. So you go to the report section, scroll down to the occasional reports, and then look for the member withdrawals. It looks something like this. You can also generate a report for individual members. So if someone wants to know how much have I taken out of the club, and when did I do it, you can generate that report. The report will show the summary, so the net amount, the fee, if any, the value of stock that was withdrawn, and then there's a link that will take you to the transaction if you want to see more, and the total amount of withdrawals for the period. It's a very simple report, but there are plenty of opportunities within your club where people might want to know. After all, we don't we don't want your club members to treat the club as an ATM, but on the other hand, if they need cash, their club account should be a ready source of capital for them. So I don't believe in inhibiting the ability of members to withdraw stocks, and this might be something during the current pandemic and recession and economic hardship. There may be members of your club who could use some of the cash from their investment club account to help them pay their bills and get through their day-to-day expenses. And I firmly believe that that's part of the role of an investment club. The next issue of Better Investing is going to have an article on hardship waivers and other aspects of supporting your club members during a pandemic that I contributed. But the member withdrawal summary just comes out of that. Again, very simple, straightforward report, but there was no easy way to get access to all this information before that. We also enhanced the stock quotes page at the top of every page on the website. Once you're logged in, you can enter a ticker symbol. Club treasurers are probably familiar with the screen because it provides access to dividend history and ex-dividend dates, but it also, we've enhanced it now that you can look up prices for any dates. It has a description of the company, key metrics and fundamentals. It has the graph of annual sales and earnings on a semi-log chart. We have the dividends and ex-dividend dates and the stock split history. And we also have a link to the Stock Watcher report, which again is a feature that club members can use to give them a basis for reporting to the club on a stock that the club has purchased. And we also note if a stock is covered by the Investor Advisory Service or Small Cap Informer newsletters. And if you are a subscriber to either of those newsletters, you will see the current recommended buy prices for those stocks on this page as well. So here's the results. It's a pretty robust chart of information. The table just gives you the basis of the sector of the industry, the market cap, the size by revenues, some volume indications, insiders and institutional ownership, PE and earnings. And then down below is the section where there's a graph, the dividend stock splits, and the Stock Watcher report. And you can also find more research at SpinOff by clicking on that link, and that gives you access to 30 or 40 different links around the internet for a deep dive into more and more research as you go there. Carolyn asks about the ex-dividend date feature when recording a dividend, and she says it's not working any longer. I'm not familiar with that. It seems to be working fine. I haven't heard any other questions, so maybe there's something going on in your browser that's getting in the way of that field populating. So I would contact support and we can see if we can perhaps diagnose it. Martha says the same thing. It's not automatically filling. We'll pass that along to our development team and take a look at it and see if we can figure out what's going on.
Doug, I've
Yes.
noticed it doesn't seem to work all the time, especially with the first stock on the list. I don't know why I sometimes have to choose another stock and then go back to the first one on the list and then it fills in. I don't know why it does that, but
well,
occasionally that happens.
Yeah, well, we'll take a look and see what might be going on, and we can figure out. Linda says, "Yep, she's seeing the same thing." So 3 people are reporting that. So we'll take a look and see if we can get that working again. I see a question from Christian. Let me just talk about our third new feature is the file storage recycle bin. Instead of removing files immediately when you delete them, they now go into the recycling bin. From there, they can be emptied. Right now, we're not automatically emptying the recycle bin, but that might be something we'll do in the future so that after 30 days, say, we'll delete it. And again, this is just kind of industry standard. Whenever you delete a file, you should be able to say, oops, and then recover it again. So files that are in the recycle bin can be restored and moved back into the file storage. Only the administrator has access to the recycle bin to restore files or to delete them entirely. And that would be anyone who has administrator privileges to delete files from file storage has access to the recycle bin. Look for the link on the far left. All you have to do now, you'll see the language here, move check files to recycle bin. So as you delete files as you did in the past, but instead of going away entirely, they go into that recycle bin, and then you can clear them at some point down the road. So that's it for the new features that we've added to myICLUB in the last couple of weeks. Christian asks, should expenses be divided equally or pro rata based on percentage ownership? What are the pros and cons, and what's the norm? Hey, Russell, why don't you give us some insight into how expenses should be allocated?
Well, you and I are in agreement on this. We always think that they should be allocated by ownership. And after doing some research, I found that actually tax law pertaining to partnerships requires expenses and income to be allocated by ownership unless there is a clause in your partnership agreement that specifically states otherwise. And my answer to this question online, I don't know of a model partnership agreement that includes something other than allocating by ownership percentage. So if it's not in your partnership agreement that you can allocate some other way, if you're allocating equally, you're technically in violation of the tax laws. Now, it's unlikely the IRS would come after you. They probably wouldn't know about it. And the other thing is, in certain conditions, if you allocate equally, you are actually penalizing people who have smaller ownership percentages. You can actually transfer ownership percentage from small owners to the large owners. So it's sort of a reverse Robin Hood effect. So, and that's the other reason, right? Besides it being possibly illegal, it can penalize your small owners. So that's the two really big reasons why we recommend do not allocate equally, allocate by ownership percentage.
Yeah, you wouldn't allocate your earnings according to one person, one equal percentage of profits. I think people get tripped up on this because a lot of expenses are calculated on a per person basis. So the club has this assumption that people will benefit equally from a certain type of expense, and so thus it should be on the books in a particular way using the equal allocation setting. Again, but that goes against what Russell just described as being our regular recommendation. And another way to look at it is that any expense the club makes should benefit the partnership. If it's a subscription or a membership, it should be in the partnership's interest that every member has that. So what the per person cost is sort of irrelevant because the objective is to lift up the entire club to make the club more successful and to generate future profits. So if push comes to shove and some people just simply can't accept that rationale, then our advice is then it's not an appropriate club expense. It should be off the club's books. If you wish to expense things in a particular way so that it's more equal, then don't run it through the club's books. Don't make it a club expense. Have every member write their own check, for instance, to Better Investing, and the treasurer can remit them all at the same time, and Better Investing is fine with that. and that way everyone gets satisfied, and it doesn't show up on the club's books, and you don't have to run through that problem. Christine has a similar question. Can dues be allocated per member? And so it depends on what you're talking about by dues, first of all, but I think the concept is true. So yes, it can be, but we don't recommend per member allocation of expenses.
Yeah, I think most of the time when people talk about dues, they're talking about the better investing. And these are the things that Doug just covered. If you think that's my individual, in my club, individual membership, you might think that, well, it's going to an individual, should be allocated by member, but it's much better just to have me pay it personally and not run it through the club books at all. Nearly all of those things that might be allocated per member are better for the individual members to pay for it themselves, and just don't include it in the records of the book of the club, and don't use club funds for it.
Well, I think that will wrap it up. Thank you very much, Russell. Thanks, Sean, as well in the back office. Thank you all for attending our presentation. We'll look forward to seeing you in September at our next iCLUBcentral Investment Club's webinar. Happy Labor Day. I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer, and we'll see you at our next webinar.